4 minutes to go. 4 minutes. I can feel the excitement in the room. Another question from an anonymous non-fiction writer. Thank you for your question. With reference to the rise and need for more narrative in non-fiction, this is a good question for all of you. What does the panel think of writers who blend fact and fiction? Samantha first.
It's not non-fiction then. I think like an editor I once worked with said this, it's like a drop of ink in a glass of water. So even if there's sort of like that little drop of fiction, it sort of colors the entire glass and it colors all of the water. That was a little extreme, maybe. And certainly these books can still be enjoyable. I would happily, and I have in the past, read books that are blends of fact and fiction. The archetypal sort of non-fiction book that's held up in the US as a sort of masterclass in journalism is Truman Capote's In Cold Blood, which we have learned many decades later is full of fiction. But it does not in any way change the pleasure of reading that book. But whether it sort of falls into the criteria of
well, that would be really interesting, whether that was published this year, whether that would qualify for the prize.
We'd have to discover that it was, because he didn't admit back then that it was
interesting.
Partly made up.
But if you're reading a memoir, somebody telling their personal story, and also sometimes you think, this person has amazing recall. Did it really happen exactly like that? How many? Because a certain amount of embroidering, a certain amount of recreation of, particularly in a memoir. I think that's.
I'm going to bring in Frank McCourt here again. I'm afraid. It's all down to Frank McCourt. It's all down to him. He had a huge bestseller. He had apparently perfect recall from the age of 4 of everything his Irish grandmother said. And I was talking to a publisher about a project I wanted to do, and they read what I had done. It was quite dull. But they said, it needs your voice in. We need to have dialogue in here. And it was about my family. And I have no memory of that dialogue, but they insisted that I put dialogue in. That, to me, is not non-fiction. And I think there is a real problem with memoir these days. That it's essentially, it's a form of lying, a lot of it, I'm afraid it is. It's not true.
Fighting talk, my goodness me.
It goes back to what I was saying at the beginning about, these two, fiction and non-fiction, have these polarized names, but actually, they're very close together.
Yes, they are. You're right.
Very close.
That's a very good point.
It's 6:45, and I would like to welcome people who are tuning in for our live stream to the announcement for the shortlist of the Baillie Gifford Prize 2022. I'd like to talk to our judges a little about the shortlist, and Andrew, a previous chair, about the creation of a shortlist. And then in a few minutes, Caroline is going to stand up and reveal this year's shortlist. Samantha, how difficult was it to get to a shortlist this year?
It was sort of a sliding scale. It turned out. How much am I allowed to reveal here?
Not
I'm not sure.
any books.
No books. Okay.
You have to talk only.
So
in
we had to go.
terms.
Okay. So we had to go from a long list of 12 to a short list of 6, and it turned out, and I think this must often be the case with juries. We were near unanimous on 2 or 3 of the books. They came up immediately in discussion. We sort of set them aside. We said, right, we've got these. And then there was sort of really sort of a prolonged brouhaha when there were 2 spots left and there were 3 books to choose from. And it seems simple. You just have to knock one book off. That's what it seems like. But actually, it took up most of our mid-morning and afternoon. But we did arrive at something that was near unanimous, I'd say.
Were you surprised that it came that the whole process ended up culminating in this sort of wrangle over trying to get 3 into 2?
Oh, not at all. You've got 6 judges with, very different sort of expertise and kind of reading experiences and coming from different places. You could say it's a miracle that you arrive at any consensus at all at any point. But of course you do, because, outstanding books have a habit of working their way to the surface. But I mean, a huge pleasure. I mean, who wouldn't want to sit and talk about books for several hours? You know.
And were you disappointed that any of your favourites didn't make it?
No, I mean, I think I was once in the initial meeting when we were deciding on a long list.
Yes.
I had a book I really liked, but it didn't make it. And then I think the shortlist is strong. I mean, it's, all 12 books were great, and all 6 books are excellent. I'm laughing a little because Caroline was towards the end put in the awkward situation of having to use her chair's deciding vote to make sure there were some books in the shortlist and not the others, and you should have seen the look on her face when she was doing it, because she knew she had to meet us again. So,
Andrew, when you look back at your experience,
Very similar, actually, last year.
Yes.
I suspect, and you would know, Toby, but I suspect it's pretty much every year. There's 3 or 4 that feel very strong, and then there is the fight over the... we had exactly the same situation last year. We had 3 fighting for 2 spaces. Yeah, and it's quite tricky.
I'm going to hand over to Caroline in just a second. Is there anything you'd like to add to this general observation, Caroline, before you reveal to the world?
No, I mean it's as I say, it's been a huge pleasure, and I think what I'd add is that you come to the meeting with having done your reading, thought about it, you have your own, like Samantha's saying, you have your own books that you want to champion, your own strong views, but actually it's the conversations that you have that make you think again, that sometimes sway you one way and another. Listening to other people's takes on books is completely fascinating, and so it's and in that way it is very consensual.
Well, the time is upon us. I'm very grateful to our sponsors at the Times and the Sunday Times, and hugely grateful to the Cheltenham Literature Festival for generously hosting this event. Please join me in welcoming Caroline Sanderson, the chair of the judges, who's going to announce this year's shortlist.
Well, hello to everybody watching now. It's great to be doing this at Cheltenham because I live and work in Gloucestershire, and I love it when sort of London comes to Gloucestershire, and it's proof that readers are alive and well outside London. So, as I've said, it's a huge pleasure and privilege to be chairing the Baillie Gifford Prize judging panel this year. In a year when other book prizes are fast disappearing from the landscape, it's huge thanks and kudos to Baillie Gifford for continuing to sponsor this brilliant prize so generously. Book prizes, as you've sort of heard, are in many ways a bit of a crazy business. Comparing books is a strange thing to do, really, when everybody's reading experience is rather different. And that's one of the beauties of reading, of course. But I think what great book prizes do, like the Baillie Gifford, is to find a consensus of outstanding books. And this highlights those for readers, signposting them to books they might not otherwise have read, and starting conversations. So I want to do a bit of a shout out for our long list, 12 wonderful books, and when deciding which of the dozens of books entered should sit on the shortlist, as I said, we considered 3 things: originality of subject matter and approach, the quality of the writing, and the book's impact on the reader. And these 12 long-listed books are all terrific reads, and I'd like to just congratulate all 12 writers now and commend their work to you. And before I announce which 6 books have made the 2022 long list, I'd just like to thank very much my fellow judges, Rachel Cook, Georgina Godwin, Clive Myrie, Laura Spinney and Samantha Subramanian for making this year's judging process such a stimulating and enjoyable one. It's kind of like being part of the best reading group ever, which all of the members bring huge expertise and wealth of diverse reading experience, and they've always read all of the books as well. So to the books. So I'm delighted to announce that the 2022 Baillie Gifford Prize for Non-Fiction shortlist is Legacy of Violence, A History of the British Empire by Caroline Elkins. The Escape Artist, The Man Who Broke Out of Auschwitz to Warn the World by Jonathan Friedland. My Fourth Time We Drowned, Seeking Refuge on the World's Deadliest Migration Route by Sally Hayden. The Restless Republic, Britain Without a Crown by Anna Kay. A Fortunate Woman, A Country Doctor's Story by Polly Morland, and Super Infinite, The Transformations of John Donne by Catherine Rundell.
Yeah. Congratulations to all the shortlisted authors. And we have a film.